start recording. So thanks everybody for joining us tonight. We're going to do a little bit of discussion here on credentialing, start to finish. Biggest reason to credential for insurances is because of the opportunity I think it brings to your practice. It opens up a huge patient volume that you can access outside of just cash pay patients, not only medical but even routine insurances. You have to credential before you can get started. And if you just look at the numbers, the number of people that have insurance today is growing. It's well over 90% of the population have some kind of insurance, either medical, routine, or both. And so, you know, being credentialed for the insurance plans is the only way that a lot of these patients are going to come and see you, is if you're on their insurance plan. If you just look at the numbers, 200 or in 2015, and I think this number has actually gone up a little bit in the last couple of years, but I can only go back. I can't go to last year. They don't have those numbers published yet. You know, 55 million Medicare recipients, 74 million Medicaid recipients. It's just a huge opportunity for every optometric practice. And then if you look at where we're headed back all the way to 2030, you know, it'll be probably 80 million or more recipients of Medicare, which will probably be more than 2,000 patients per doctor. So you see the opportunity is huge. So a couple of things, three things that I would suggest you do before you get started with really growing your practice is you know, looking at what your allowables are, look what your fees are set at, and basically I recommend start with Medicare's allowable to establish your exam fees. Medicare allowables are typically middle of the road. There's obviously lower paying, like routine vision plans or Medicaid, but if you look at Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, Cigna, some of the bigger commercial insurance panels, they actually have even a higher reimbursement than Medicare. So Medicare is just kind of a middle of the road. I think that's, especially for a corporate location, it's probably a great place to start. I also encourage you treat everything your license allows, and of course charge for every procedure you perform. It just seems like optometrists are the only one that give away procedures for free. You go to any other healthcare provider, you go to your medical doctor, your cardiologist, your oncologist, your pediatrician, nobody's doing anything for free, and optometrists shouldn't be either. We should charge for everything we do. And then you have to invest in your practice. You have to invest in technology. As I've always said, the only thing that I really have to sell in my practice is the experience of the exam. And what I have found is that the best technology that you can afford to have in your practice is going to give you the best experience to offer to your patients. But if you do all three of these, your income growth is really unlimited. You can increase your gross exam fees $50,000 to $80,000 easily in a year just by focusing on those three aspects of your practice. As far as Medicare allowables go, you can go to your local Medicare carrier, and you can find out what your Medicare allowables are. This is actually my Medicare carrier here in Illinois. It's NGS. You just go to ngsmedicare.com. You look for the Medicare Part B fee schedule, and it'll show you exactly what the allowable fees are. The next thing you have to do is you have to decide how you're going to set up your business. You have to decide whether you're going to be a sole proprietor or you're going to be a corporation. And you have to do this before you initiate the credentialing process. best bet is to consult with a lawyer or an accountant to help you decide, but it's extremely important that you get this right from the beginning, and then you're consistent throughout. The last thing you want to do is start out as a sole proprietor and then decide to incorporate, maybe add a doctor to come in and work with you. Well, if you do that, now you're a larger practice, multiple doctors you'll want to incorporate, and it's very, very time consuming to re-credential for every insurance panel when you are starting out as a sole proprietor and then you're going to a corporation. In fact, sometimes you won't be able to get onto a panel when you apply. It may be full, and you may have been on it before, but once you reapply, they don't have to guarantee you a place on that panel. And I've seen doctors lose their place on some of the insurance panels simply because they were switching from sole proprietor to corporation. So I would encourage everybody starting out to start out as a corporation. Even if you're a solo practitioner, you still want to set yourself up as a corporation. So to begin the credentialing process, you first have to apply and get your state license. Then you need to get an individual NPI number, and if you're going to incorporate or have a group practice, then you also want to get a group NPI number. The group NPI number, though, will have to come after you get your tax ID number. So you can get your tax ID number by going to federaltaxid.us. All of these are easy to do. You can do these online. They're fast, they're easy to get your NPI number, to get your tax ID number. Of course, your license is dependent on the state. Some states obviously have more hurdles to jump over than others. Required information for credentialing. This is specific for Medicare. This is probably the biggest one, and this is the one I would encourage new doctors to jump on first, because Medicare is typically accessible in all 50 states to all optometrists, and so this and there's Medicare beneficiaries in all 50 states. Wherever you practice, you're going to have access to Medicare patients. You'll need an NPI number. You'll need your Social Security number. You're going to need the name of your optometry school, the year you graduated. You're going to need your optometric license in the state that you practice in. You're going to have a legal business name, and you're going to also need that for your tax ID number. And then your incorporation date and state where you incorporated. And if you're an international student, then you also have to use the same name on your applications as is on your Social Security card, and oftentimes you're going to have to provide some kind of proof of citizenship or a green card. Other things that are optional but highly recommended, a state-controlled substance license. Some insurances will require you to have the state-controlled substance license and the DEA certificate in order to provide medical care on certain insurance panels. I know there's several Medicaid panels in certain states where you have to have that information in order to be able to do medical exams as well as routine.
Eric, can I ask a question?
Sure.
The previous one where you were talking about the Medicare, that's what you needed to get credentialed with Medicare. You also said something that this was the one that was most, like that, is that the one that requires the most time and the most effort?
As far as the application goes, it is a long application form. If you're going to sign up as an individual, it's about 30 to 32 pages, but if you're signing up, if you're going to incorporate, it's about 60 pages. It's not that it's that much more difficult. There's just more pages that you have to look through. You have to, dot the I's, cross the T's. You got to get everything right. However, Medicare is fairly straightforward. If I were going to ask my credentialing specialist which were the most difficult applications, they would specify a couple specific states with Medicaid as being the most difficult applications. There's a couple Medicare applications that are maybe have a little bit more to it than others, but Medicare is probably not the most difficult to do if you know what you're doing. Medicaid probably has some of the more difficult ones.
Okay. And then the information that you listed on that slide, your state license number, NPI number, that's pretty consistent for for credentialing across every insurance. Is that correct?
That's probably pretty consistent for most insurances. Primarily what you'll have to do is when you go to do commercial insurances like Blue Cross Blue Shield and Aetna, Cigna, things like that, what you'll have to do is you'll have to fill out the CAQH, which we'll talk about at the end of this presentation. You'll have to do CAQH first, and then and most for CAQH you'll have to put most of that information in, and then Blue Cross Blue Shield and all of these other insurances will utilize the CAQH information to process the application. So basically, the Medicare application has the most pages because they are going to get all the information directly from you.
So they don't use CAQH?
They don't use CAQH, and which is why their application process is so much longer. Same thing goes with Medicaid. Neither one of those government insurance plans use the CAQH. Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, Cigna, they use the CAQH along with a number of other commercial carriers. So the good news there is you fill out your CAQH application and you got to keep it updated, but then there's going to be a limited amount of information that you have to actually share on an application to Blue Cross Blue Shield. It's more like a 2 to 5 page application with limited information, and then they will get all the other additional information from CAQH.
Perfect, thank you.
So as far as applying to Medicare, whether you're a one owner or multiple owner, that will determine how many pages or how many forms you have to fill out. A one owner does the 855I. Multiple owners have each owner do an 855I, so everybody has to fill out that one. And then you fill out one 855B for your corporation. And then you fill out the 855R, which reassigns benefits to the corporation or to another doctor. So if you were going to have another doctor working for you in your practice, you would have them fill out the 855R, and that would assign all reimbursements to you, and then you could pay that doctor however you want to pay him, whether you want to pay him on a percentage or an hourly fee, or however you want to pay him. You can pay him any way you want to, but all Medicare reimbursement will come to the doctor holding like the contract or the doctor who owns the corporation. So you can see that the more doctors you have involved, the more applications that are involved with signing up for Medicare. Now, I highly recommend that when you do sign up for Medicare, you become a participating provider who's going to accept assignment. Patients will much prefer going to a participating provider because in that situation, the doctor submits the claim and waits for reimbursement, and the patient only has to pay out of pocket maybe the refraction if it's not covered, and typically it's never covered by Medicare, or maybe the 20% that Medicare doesn't reimburse, and if they don't have secondary insurance, they would have to pay the 20%, but that's all they would pay. If you're a non-participating provider, then you would actually submit a claim still, but you could actually collect upfront from the patient everything that you're billing them that day up to the allowable as a non-participating provider. There is a limit to how much you can charge, but you'd collect that from the patient up front in addition to the refraction. And so the patient's got to pay a lot more out of pocket. There's so many Medicare participating providers around that most patients are not going to go to a non-participating provider knowing that they got to pay so much more out of pocket. Also, as a participating provider, your reimbursement from Medicare is actually 5% higher than if you were a non-participating provider who is accepting assignment. So as a non-participating provider, you have the option on every claim to either accept assignment or not accept assignment. If you accept assignment, you're going to get paid 5% less from Medicare than what you would if you were a participating provider. So once again, there's really no advantages to not being a participating provider accepting assignment.
Has anyone ever explained to you why they would be a non-participating provider?
You know, the only people that I've seen, the only doctors I've seen that do this are doctors who typically don't want to jump through all the hoops of submitting claims for every procedure they perform. I've seen some doctors who are non-participating providers because they don't know how to process claims for like post-op cataract, and so they will accept assignment on easy claims and submit those and wait for reimbursement. But on the harder claims that they don't know how to do, they will do those as a non-participating, not accepting assignment and collect it from the patient up front. I mean, I've had one doctor explain it to me that way, but I mean, I can't think of a worse way to slow down your Medicare practice than to be a non-participating provider. It doesn't really make sense to me to do that, especially if you can submit your claims and get reimbursed. So this next slide is talking about the EFT agreement, which is basically just an automatic deposit of reimbursement into your bank account. It's the 588 form that you would submit, and this is absolutely something you want to do with every insurance panel so that you don't have to worry about getting checks sent to your office. I mean, they're especially in a corporate location in Walmart. There have been multiple times where the mail has taken a unreasonable amount of time to get from the mailbox outside of the building to my desk. And so it's just so much better to have the checks automatically deposited into your account. The insurance companies would prefer this because it's a much greener way to go, less paperwork on their part, definitely less paperwork on the doctor's part too, so that's a win-win. So when should you apply for Medicare? Well, when you have a practice of your own, and that would be either a corporate or a non-corporate location, or when you have a job secured with a practice and it's not an internship. Now, it's important that you have a location because when you submit your applications, you have to have a physical address for the practice to submit that application. And they are very, very particular about this. In fact, to the point where we've had some new doctors that we've credentialed for who had their credentialing denied because they were submitting it before they even started building their new location. And the problem is that you literally have to have a physical building to start the application. And what they did in a couple situations is they actually did Google Maps on the address and saw that it was a empty lot and denied the application. And the reason that they're so specific about this is because there's so much fraud within the Medicare system where people are submitting claims that are totally bogus claims, either for products that they're not providing or for patients they didn't see. And so they've really gotten very, very serious about making sure when you fill out your application that your location is actually an optometric practice. So you need to have something lined up before you submit your application. You don't just submit it when you graduate from optometry school and you have your license. You have to have a job pretty much lined up first. So with Medicare, when can you start seeing Medicare patients? You can start as soon as your application has been received and established with Medicare. You can start seeing patients on that begin date. Even though your application hasn't been processed yet, you can start seeing patients. You just can't submit any claims until your application has been completely processed and approved. So whatever patients you're seeing during this period of time while they're processing your application, you just have to hold on to those claims and then submit them when your application has been processed completely. And then when can you bill Medicare for those patients? Once again, you can bill them after your application is approved. And what we call this is backdating your claims. Backdating claims are doing claims prior to your application being processed, but after the date that the application process was initiated. Now, not every medical plan will allow you to do this. And a lot of the routine vision plans will not allow you to backdate claims. They will not let you see patients until you actually have your application processed completely, you've been accepted, and you're on the panel. So Medicare allows backdating of claims, but a lot of other insurances don't. So when you're in the process of submitting applications, you need to find out which ones can you backdate claims for and which ones can you not. Are there other insurance companies that allow us to see patients while the application is processing? Like I just said, some will, some won't. Some Medicaids will allow this, but most commercial plans and most vision plans will not. So as I mentioned earlier about CAQH, this is basically a universal credentialing service for many medical and routine insurance plans. And so you have to fill out a CAQH application, which has a lot of the information that you're giving to Medicare for their application, but it's like you're doing this part of the application once for CAQH, but you can use it for many, many different insurance plans. And so each insurance plan will still have an application that you have to fill out, but it'll be a much shorter application, and then they will go to CAQH and access your information from them. You do need to initiate your CAQ application by first applying to another insurance plan, and then you can find your own. You can initiate a number for yourself, and then the insurance panels will use that information to complete their application process. Now, as far as Medicare goes, if you became a provider prior to July 1st of 2011, which is a long time ago, you have to revalidate, and most of us have already revalidated since then. I suspect that we'll have to revalidate again in the future. Basically, I take the revalidation process that they initiated back in 2011 as getting everybody into the PICO system, which is the automated system that Medicare uses to process your applications. You can actually do it online. You can actually fill out all the forms online. And so I think every time they update that software program, like the PICO system, they're probably going to force doctors to go back in and revalidate, or they'll probably find other reasons to revalidate. Unfortunately, the revalidation process is doing a lot of the same application process that you did the first time. Not everything has to be repeated. You don't have to redo the 460 participation agreement, but most everything else you'll probably have to repeat during that revalidation. So what I encourage doctors to do is pay attention to every letter they get from their Medicare carrier. Read them, because if it's the initiation of a revalidation and you don't do it, then after about 60 days they're going to start denying your Medicare claims, and it's a hassle to try to revalidate after you've been bumped off the plan. So it's much easier just to revalidate when they ask you to do so. So I know the process, it can be extremely overwhelming. There's a lot to it. You need to know what you're doing. The one thing I will say, and I've seen many doctors who have done this themselves, wait for denial after denial, and takes months and months and months to process the application. I have some doctors who have even taken more than a year in doing it themselves, and it can go as quickly as several weeks. I actually just had a new doctor that we credentialed for Medicare, and I think it took about 3 weeks from start to finish. Now, that's not the expectation. I would typically tell somebody to expect 3 months to get, or 90 days to get your Medicare application processed. And other applications can take longer. Routine vision Davis can take up to 6 months to get an application processed. So there's a lot to it, you know, you need to decide which panels you want to join, and then you need to get the credentialing process started, keeping in mind that some applications have to be submitted before others can be submitted. Some states you have to do Medicare before you can do Medicaid. In some states, they expect you, for some routine vision plans, to be a Medicare provider. So every state has different rules that you have to follow. So there's a lot of information to be aware of, and a lot of it is state dependent. So what I typically suggest for doctors is you want to start a medical optometric practice. In doing so, you need to look at your fee schedule. You need to treat everything your license allows. You need to charge for every procedure you do. You're going to have to invest in new technology, and you have to find your comfort level with all the different tests that we can do now as optometrists. We can do punctal plugs. We can do amniotic membranes. We can utilize equipment, technology like OCT and fundus photography. So you need to invest in the best technology you can afford, and you need to do as much as your license allows. So that is all I have. If anybody has questions, I'll be happy to take them. Just remember to unmute yourself.
Eric, this is Vince. Are we able to get these slides?
Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions?
This is more online of getting comfortable with this, you'll provide the recording also?
Sure, absolutely. If I can figure out how to get it off my computer here at home, absolutely, I'll share the recording, and I'll share all the slides. But what we'll do is we'll customize the slides for Energeyes. So it won't have OBC in the corner, it'll have Energeyes in the corner. So I'm going to have Justin do that tomorrow, and then that's the those are the slides that I'll send out to everybody.
Eric?
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is pretty interesting, and I wanted to ask, is here in Florida, pretty much everybody on Medicaid is moved to an HMO.
Yes.
So what do you say to those states? And obviously credentialing becomes, do you still get on Medicaid just for those patients who are Medicare, Medicaid, or what would be your recommendation?
So I would still encourage you to get on Medicaid for sure. And the other thing I would encourage you, Steve, and all of your colleagues in Southern Florida is to move to a different state and practice optometry. Because,
what's the weather like? What's the weather like where you are?
Well, it's lousy, but you can have my practice.
It's HMO less in Illinois. But I will tell you that Florida, Southern Florida specifically, because if you get away from the Miami area, getting on more panels is much easier. And then California has the same issue with the HMOs, and they are tough on optometrists to get on. Unfortunately, there's no guarantee that in those two states that you can get on all the panels that you want to get on. You can always get on Medicare, and you can always get on Medicaid. But I'm assuming your question is you can become a Medicaid provider, but if you can't get on the HMOs, you can't see the patients.
Right. So we have, like, I'm on, I think the 3 insurances that I'm not on are AdMed, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and Humana, which, again, that's not that big of a deal. But things like Molina, which we created down here and stuff like that, I don't even care to get. But it's more of a question for the students. I'm happy with what I'm doing. But so just to clarify, so once you get out of South Florida, for the students, it's not that bad. But does other parts of the country have this kind of where Medicaid is being moved to HMOs? Well,
it's being moved to HMOs all over. I mean, here in Illinois now, it's well, I guess I shouldn't say HMO. Here in Illinois, they have different, they're calling it a different name. ECOs, I think, or something along those lines. But anybody can get on the panel. I mean, all you got to do is apply.
Okay.
So there's no restriction to optometrists getting on the panels. Now, I find it interesting in those states like in Southern Florida where they keep you off of Medicaid's programs, because the reason why it's so easy to get on in Illinois is because hardly any ophthalmologists are Medicaid providers. In fact, very few. And so if they didn't let optometrists on the panels, nobody would see the patients. I'm assuming in Southern Florida that the ophthalmologists are happy to take the do the Medicaid examinations. It must pay better than what it does in other states.
Yeah, either that or they're using it to then upsell to other things.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people down here are on Medicaid but have loads of cash, so it's kind of weird.
Huh. Okay. Any other questions?
I'll just, Eric, I wanted to chime in quick. I had a nice conversation with Wayne Mitchell, who's the recruiting guy for this area. Do you know Wayne from Walmart?
No, that name doesn't ring a bell.
He's basically Tennessee, Arkansas, Alabama, Kentucky, and so he's excited as an underling of Chris Cordero to get this program, because I talked to him about it yesterday, and invite any of us to go For example, for me, he's invited me to go to Pikeville, Kentucky here in a couple of weeks and offer this very thing you're doing and get the ball rolling with this thing. So he's excited to do it and wants to partner with us. And so I told him I'd copy him and Chris Cordero on email after tonight here with what we've done and just give them the idea that we're, as a group, we're ready to go with this.
Travis, to talk to that, I've already talked to Dr. Cordero, and, we were talking about putting this together with the other talk that I was talking about the slides and why did I go into corporate optometry, and he's actually got those slides and he's pushing it through legal before he's going to put his stamp on it. So for now you can still do it, but after I get his approval, then it'll kind of be a full program.
Okay.
So do we need to send these slides to Chris so that?
No, not the credentialing ones at all. I've already talked to him about that. The ones he was interested in looking at were more the ones related to, why would you work in a corporate environment? Why would you not? Not the credentialing ones.
Okay.
So that Travis, that should make it easier in terms of these slides. These are good to go. But then Chris wanted a full program with the credentialing plus a talk about, trying to help their side of why would a fourth year, want to get into corporate optometry, and maybe why would they want to stay in it? And that would be the second part of the talk.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Now let me ask you, when I send these slides, would it be helpful to add notes to each slide maybe?
Yes.
Sure.
So that you can actually have a maybe even a script to I don't know. I struggle to memorize scripts that other people have written for presentations, but if that's helpful, I can type out most everything I said and add it to the slides, and that might even make it easier than trying to listen to this presentation and learn the slides. It might be easier just to read it.
Eric has a suggestion too. That sounds pretty labor intensive, but I think a lot of people worry that, because of your experience, I mean, I understand it and I wouldn't have any trouble delivering it, but we're always fearful of what about that question we don't know the answer to.
So,
and you've done this so many times and you probably got those kind of fringe questions. I'd be interested to know what some of those are and on how you address them, because then I think we feel a little bit prepared, because if we stay to the topics that you listed here, those that have practiced it, I think are pretty comfortable with it, or could be pretty comfortable with it. But it's just what happens when we're asked that question, like Steve asked in Florida. Well, some of us wouldn't know, how to address that. So those special questions that may come our way. That
okay.
That's where you have Dr. Bots on speed dial.
Oh yeah.
So what we could do is we could put a slide on here, with my email address on it, and they can send all their questions to me, and I would be happy to respond to them. To be honest with you, fourth year students don't ask a lot of questions because they don't know what they don't know. And so that's why I'm saying this is an easy presentation to do. It is, however long it takes you to cover all the information, that's pretty much about as long as it goes. At this point in time, you can just see their eyes are swimming, their brains are just exploding, and they have no idea what you're talking about, but they know they got to do something. You're just really planting the seed for them to know that this is what they have to do. So what they're going to get out of this is that list of information they have to have. That's probably the most critical thing that you're going to give them, is the information of everything they need to start obtaining, so they don't wait until the last minute to start getting all this into order. This is really more just to help them be organized when they start the process. But I'll talk to my billing, I'll talk to my credentialing specialist, and I'll come up with like maybe 10 questions that we most commonly get from new grads, and I'll share those and the answers with you. And because it might be helpful if we just put those into the presentation. That's kind of what I did at the end of this presentation, is if we just put the, if we just put the questions in there, then they don't ask them.
Yeah, good point. Well, and then, and then Eric, honestly, you were talking about coming up with a script. I'll be honest, when it's not your own script, like if you come up with a script, I'm actually going to still use my own words because it'll be much more natural.
That's why I was asking if people would like that or not, because I'm with you, Nahid. I can't memorize words. I look at the slide, I put it into my own words, and then I talk. It's
more
very,
than anything, it would be just like, I think just bullet points on what's really maybe not on the slide, but that's important to mention.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that. Anybody else have any other suggestions on that? What you would like? Well, this is an easy crowd. You guys don't want anything. This is perfect. See,